Hey, this is Dr. Ange. I'm going to be talking about mental health, spirituality, and religion. This is going to be my first recording, so bear with me as I'm still learning how to use all these wonderful programs that were in my laptop all along, and I never knew they were there. So there you go. You discover new things every day. So I just want to put out a disclaimer. I am not a qualified doctor, but I am a graduate in mental health negotiations in the School of Life, which kind of makes me an expert as I have over 30 years of personal experience with struggling with mental health issues, but also in recovery and making a life for myself. So I always believe that mental health recovery is a journey. It's not so much about whether you're sick, unwell, well, balanced, whatever. It's about a journey. It's about how you learn to cope. It's about finding resources that help you stabilize or have a more balanced life, or just to be able to function. I'm not even sure if stability or, they're parts of recovery, but just being able to function, and functioning in life looks different to different people. Um, but finding a way to function when you have got mental health issues is a journey. So today's talk will be on mental health, spirituality, and religion. I chose to break it up into spirituality and religion. I think for a lot of people, um, spirituality is a bit more open, um, whereas religion usually refers to a set of beliefs, often based on a religious text or a religious book. And, there's rules or ways of living that are set, and it's recommended that if you have a religion, you follow the beliefs of your religion as closely as you can. Whereas a lot of people feel more comfortable with the idea that, they acknowledge that there is maybe a power greater than themselves, or that there are entities outside of what we can see with our own eyes, like spirits or angels or things like that. And they acknowledge that part of life for them is spiritual, but they may not want to be committed to a set of beliefs like you do if you're following a religion. And I just want to say, as far as mental health, having spiritual or religious beliefs can be really useful. It can be very powerful, especially when you're struggling. If you feel you can turn to God or to angels or spirits or whatever you believe in, but if you can turn to a source outside of yourself when you're struggling and get a sense of prayer, like, not sense of prayer, sorry, if you can pray and get a reassurance about your future or a sense of peace or have a sense of wisdom or get some guidance um, from following your spiritual or religious beliefs, I think that's really important as far as, your mental health. But at the same time, sometimes having religious or spiritual beliefs, especially when you're becoming unwell, and depending on what you believe, can actually add to confusion. So that's something I wanted to explore in this session today. Okay, so because I am a peer worker and a lot of the work I do with clients, I'm coming from a lived experience perspective with my mental health. And so I think it's only fair to just share a little bit of my story. And I, you know, with peer work, the majority of the time you're actually listening to clients. You're not imposing your views or your story all the time. But given the topic, I thought I'll share a little bit of what I've gone through in relation to mental health and spirituality and religion. So I was raised Catholic. We weren't strict Catholics, and in my culture, there was a lot of superstition and a lot of like witchcraft and just a lot of stuff mixed in to Catholicism. So I had a very confused understanding of like what the difference between spirituality and Christianity was. And in my mind, it kind of didn't matter which one you followed, they were all kind of the same. I don't believe that anymore, but I am respectful that people do have different beliefs. So coming back to mental health journey, when I was 18, I think it was 18, I had a manic episode. And as part of that manic episode, I experienced all sorts of things. I did go through, I think they call it religious delusions. So with a manic episode, you don't sleep, you don't eat, you have all this energy, and you sort of feel like you're functioning on like pure electricity or something. And it can be really intense. It can be really emotional. Like you feel everything so much deeper when you're manic, and that can be beautiful if it's a positive experience. But it can be, you know, really heartbreaking because you're kind of sincere, but you're in this really altered headspace. So with um, religious delusions, I think I also had delusions of grandeur. So at some point, I sort of believed I was Jesus. I think that's what was happening. And I felt that if I killed myself, I would be resurrected. Now, you might see that as problematic. Like, I think, especially for my family and my friends who I think I had left some writing. Like, I sort of disappeared, but they found some of my writing. And it was a bit cryptic, but I think they could see these religious themes and they were worried that I would hurt myself. Um, and, in the headspace I was with the episode I was going through, you know, I wasn't seeing things as they were. Like, I know for sure I'm not Jesus. But in that headspace, it all seemed very real and it made sense. And there were other religious themes. I think there were like, at one point I thought I was Jesus. I think another point I thought I was Mary Magdalene. It was all kind of a lot of religious themes. I did have a genuine experience um, of faith in the middle of all that confusion, but I might share that in another recording. But the reason I'm sharing this part of what I went through when I was having a manic episode is a lot of times when people are becoming unwell, whether it's from mania, whether it's from schizophrenia, psychosis, there can be religious themes. And I think when you have got mental health issues, whether it's a formal diagnosis or whether you experience drug-induced psychosis, or whether you're someone who has depression from time to time or anxiety, I think there can be a love or hate relationship with religion or spiritual beliefs. And I know from my own experience, it could have been easy to go, okay, that religious stuff that I experienced when I was 18, that was pretty scary. I don't ever want to be in that headspace again. I'm just going to stay away from formal religion. And maybe I did, in a way, do that. Because in my 20s, I was more like spiritual. But then I did go through a Christian stage when I was like, after that whole manic thing, I was going to church, a Christian church for about a year. And in that year, it helped a lot. So I don't know. But I have met people, this is kind of the point I'm trying to get at. I have met people who've got ongoing mental health issues. I think one of them was a person with schizophrenia, and another person I can think of had bipolar. And for them, the religious delusions was very much connected to when they were unwell. So with the person I knew who had bipolar, they had a bit of a cyclic episode. So cyclic, and I'm sorry I have a lisp. Deal with it. Cyclic, or things going in cycles. With bipolar, I guess is when you can sort of see a pattern. And for this person, I think they'd have a manic episode around the same time every year, usually around, I think it was October. And for them, they felt that being too exposed to religious ideas kind of triggered their mania. Like they felt there was a connection there. And so for them, they would avoid formal Christianity because they felt that was part of making them unwell. And you got to respect that. They did believe in God, but they sort of found their own way of believing and turning to God as part of their life. They felt if they if they went to church or read scripture too much, or that would feed into when they become unwell. So for them, avoiding religion was a way of living with their mental health issues, and you got to respect that because everyone's different. The other person I knew, he had schizophrenia, and for him, he did go through, like, he was an active member of a Christian church. He was very involved. He was, pretty happy with his faith and his belief. But when he'd go through stints of becoming unwell with schizophrenia, he would get very dogmatic and sort of super religious. And so for him as well, it was best, like, he felt in order to avoid, becoming unwell, it was best to just stay away from church and stuff. And it can be sad, because, ideally your religion should be a source of support, especially if you're part of a church community or part of a religious community. You should be able to go there and be around people who have the best intentions for you and are looking out for you. But if you feel in yourself that exposing yourself to religious ideas is going to make you unwell, then it makes sense to just stay away from that. And the same with reading scripture. I'm going from a Christian perspective because I am a Christian, but I think probably people in other religions would have had similar experience, either in knowing people who have mental health issues, and seeing them become over religious when they're becoming unwell, or maybe the opposite. Like for me, I think I mentioned after the manic episode I had. So I think I was about 19. I was going to a Christian church, or a couple of different Christian churches, for about a year. I found that really powerful and really helpful. I read the Bible. I started praying a lot. I felt that God was doing amazing things in my life. And I think in that time is when I found a good psychiatrist who, and I found really good services. So I was able to build up the skills I needed to be able to function, because I dropped out of uni, and I didn't have work skills. I hadn't worked before. So in that year of my life, I had job training. I did assertiveness training, which I think out of all, I do have some real university degrees under my belt. I have done a lot of courses. I've done all sorts of stuff. But out of all the things I've studied, I think assertiveness training was the most powerful, as far as giving me practical skills that I could use in everyday life to function. I will do a different recording about assertiveness training. But that year in my life was it was intense, and it was really hard because I'm still trying to come to terms with what does it mean to have a mental illness or mental health issues. But at the same time, discovering God, and discovering that for me, praying and being part of a church community were really positive and really powerful things to help guide me in my struggles. That was really special, and it made those hard times a lot easier to live with. After about that year, I still had a really strong belief in God, but I had a lot of issues with Christians. And, I don't want to get into Christian bashing. I'm not going to get into specific stuff, but I did have issues with the church in particular that I was going to. And so over my 20s, I kind of became, spiritual. Like, I believed there was a God, but I didn't feel comfortable committing to a set of religious beliefs or a religious text. I just wanted to explore, what does it mean if God is real? What does that mean for me? And what do all these other spiritual beliefs or spiritual practices or even religions, because I do like to learn, and I do like to study. So I did, over my 20s, I looked into all different religions and I looked into a lot of spiritual beliefs, and I sort of made this mishmash of ideas and spiritual practices. I kind of put, a little bit of Hinduism, a little bit of New Age, a little bit of occult practices, a little bit of everything, um, and sort of had my own idea of what living a spiritual life looked like. Um, but then later on, like after I had my son, I turned back to Christianity, and that is what works for me. Um, I will say, when I was like in that spiritual exploration over my 20s, um, some of the ideas were good, but from a mental health perspective, some of the ideas probably didn't help with my mental well-being, especially when it came to some of the New Age practices. I remember I was part of a group of women. We had women's group, and we did, we'd make jewelry out of beads, and we'd have I can't remember. There was a lady who taught Native American healing things, and there was this dome thing, and I can't remember what it's called, but it was like Sweat Lodge. That was what it was called. Sweat Lodge. So this Sweat Lodge is like a spiritual practice, or a cleansing practice. You can look it up. It's very popular in New Age stuff, and I think it is genuinely a Native American thing, but maybe it's been appropriated by the New Age. I don't know. Anyway, so I was part of this New Agey kind of group, and on one level, it was really nice to be around women who, they were really creative, and it was really fun, and it was really interesting. Kind of learnt a lot of stuff. But on the other hand, I was getting charged a lot for a lot of different courses, and being told, oh yeah, you'll get a lot out of this, you'll really grow, and like in reflection, I kind of feel really ripped off. You know what I mean? It was interesting, and life can be interesting, and you can always learn. But I think when you're going through depression and you're craving support and community, and you are, looking for spiritual answers, you can also be taken advantage of. But that can be the same for a religion. If you're vulnerable, there are some religions, there are some churches who will be happy to take your money and give you a sense of community, but then, you're literally paying a price. And whether the teachings or not help you, again, it's one of those things that you got to take with a grain of salt. And for me, that those years over my 20s, I learnt a lot. I met a lot of different people. I had a lot of interesting conversations. But on reflection, I can see that some of those spiritual beliefs, and especially a lot of the people I met, didn't have my best interest at heart. And maybe because I was vulnerable, maybe took advantage of me financially. And also spiritually, I felt really burnt out. I'm maybe a bit naive or maybe a bit intense, because I don't do things by halves. Like if I'm interested in something, I go at it 200%. Maybe other people are a bit more cautious, but I remember coming out of that stage of my life and just feeling really used and really burnt out and really disillusioned, because people who I thought were genuine and who were my friends and who were, supposedly super spiritual just turned out to be a bit dodgy. But then you can have that experience with churches as well, and I've certainly, not so much in a financial way, I've certainly been in churches where I have felt used and hurt, maybe a little bit financially, but definitely in the sense of, you have these ideals, especially in Christianity, it's supposed to be about love, unity, forgiveness, community, supporting each other, family. And then when you're in a church that doesn't match those ideals, it can be really disappointing. But people are people, and when you're looking at God as the source of all, If you compare people to those high standards of what is God, then it's going to be a letdown. So, yeah, it's a bit confusing. And I guess that's sort of my main point, is that spirituality and religious beliefs certainly can be helpful and beneficial when you're looking for things to as a way to support you in your mental health journey. It can be very positive. It can be very positive to be around a group of people who believe the same things as you or who believe similar things to you. But having mental health struggles can also make you very vulnerable. And there are people out there who will take advantage of that. So that can be a bad side of spiritual and religious beliefs. The other bad side, and I'll use this more in a religious setting, not so much a spiritual setting, because again, I think spiritual beliefs or people with spiritual beliefs, they do tend to be more open, and in a way they are more accepting. But in a religious setting, this is where you can get really hurt if you have got mental health issues. And part of that is sometimes people in a church or in a religious community, they don't understand what it means to have a mental illness or mental health struggles. And this is where you can feel really lonely. You sort of turn to your religious community for support and for help and for healing and for prayer. And if the people you're turning to don't understand what you're going through, especially with depression, I found, I'm someone who has a tendency towards depression. I was labelled with having a bipolar disorder. That never really sat well with me. 30 years later, I only had one manic episode, but I've had depression on and off throughout my life. So the way I see it is I have a tendency towards depression. And so when it came to church life and going through some serious bouts of depression, like when I get full on depressed, it's very low and it's very, trying not to kill myself each day, very hard to find a reason to keep going. So when you carry that kind of darkness and that heaviness and you don't know how to stop it or change it, and you turn to your religion for answers, the people in your religious organization might not have the right answers, I remember being told, well, you've got Jesus in your life now, you shouldn't be depressed. And it's like, well, yeah, I know I've got Jesus in my life now, but I'm still depressed and I want to know how to deal with this, I think another one was, your sins are forgiven now, you've got nothing to be depressed. Things like that. And, all those things may be true in a theological perspective, but in a practical level, they weren't helpful to me while I was struggling with depression. So, I think that can be problematic when you have mental health issues and you turn to your religious group hoping for support, hoping for direction, hoping for guidance and wisdom, and you come across judgment. That can really hurt, and it can make you either lose your faith or lose hope in the people around you as a source of support. The other side, I know, I'm Latina, and in my culture, because there's a lot of belief in superstition and occult practices, and so you can have stuff where people believe, not so much in mental illness, but they might believe in spiritual stuff, or spiritual stuff mixed up with religion. So rather than taking a family member who's unwell to a doctor, they might take someone who's mentally unwell to a spiritual healer. I don't want to go into that too much on this recording. But in that way, in cultures where they don't trust so much in doctors, or where there's a lot of poverty, so you can't afford to take someone to a doctor when they're mentally unwell, there might be spiritual healing or religious practices where, mental illness is seen as something demonic. And again, that can add to confusion, add to a sense of isolation, and actually prevent people from getting help. And then I think in some religious groups, mental illness is not recognised at all. And whether that's a religious thing or a cultural thing, I think someone in that situation could feel really conflicted, where they feel they are struggling mentally, and yet the people in their community or their religious community have no understanding and no point of reference in how to help that person. So I'm going to have to pause here. But yeah, I think there's vulnerabilities when you have mental health issues or when you're struggling with mental health. And often spiritual groups or religious groups can make it worse. I don't think people intentionally make it worse. I don't think people, most people who do have spiritual or religious beliefs, they want to help others. They want to be supportive. But certainly in my experience, even though they had the best of intentions, sometimes the religious people I was involved with kind of made it worse, especially with feeling depressed. You already feel isolated, and then it's like coming up against the wall when I sort of turned for religious help. At the same time, though, and I know this is frustrating because I do try to keep things balanced, there were times where I received prayer and I was filled with hope and love and peace. Even though my circumstances were still chaotic and dark, receiving prayer was powerful, and I believe when we pray, we're asking God to intercede into us. So I felt a huge difference in that way. So sometimes the experiences were bad, sometimes the experiences helped. I guess it might be different or similar for everyone. I'm just going to take a break. I'll be back in a bit. Okay, cool. I just wanted to take a moment to listen to what I had been sharing, and I think that I'm probably at a good spot to wrap up. Yeah, I think the challenge when you have got mental health issues, and there's so many challenges, it's so frustrating. But when it comes to spiritual and religious beliefs, the challenge is finding a balance. Ideally, your spiritual or religious beliefs should be a part of your life where you are affirmed as a person, where you are told, or you get the impression, a strong positive impression, that you are worthy of being loved, that you are worthy of having peace in your life, that by interacting with a spiritual or religious community, you get to experience people who care about you and have your best interests at heart, and who are there to support and encourage you in your life, not just with your mental health, but in the overall journey of life. You should be able to look at these people and know in your heart that they are for you and not against you. So you need that. Some people are atheists, I respect that, but if you're someone who believes in God or believes in a greater power, you need that sense of community. You want that support, and that overall experience should be a positive one. It should make you feel better about yourself, and in the best situation, it should be teaching you skills, spiritual skills or spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs, to help you cope with your life and your mental health. And I'll give an example of that. Like, as a Christian, one of the main, kind of the main thing with Christianity is about forgiveness. Jesus died for our sins, so God forgives us, and Christians are supposed to forgive others. Now, from a mental health perspective, if you hang on to every single offense, if every time someone hurts or disappoints you, you hang on to that bitterness and that anger and that injustice. And it means, stuff happens in life where you know, it's natural, it's normal to feel angry and to recognize where injustice happens. But as a Christian, we're expected to forgive people who offend us and hurt us, and use and abuse us. So I've actually found that the whole principle of forgiveness, it helps. It helps with my mental well-being. It means that when horrible things have happened to me, it wasn't instant. I won't lie and say, yeah, I forgave the person who molested me when I was a kid. I forgave them in 5 minutes. No. It can be a process, but even to try to reach forgiveness, and to forgive people who have hurt and used us and so forth, it's given me peace in my life. There's things that have happened to me that are unforgivable if we're working from a human perspective. And yet, because of my Christian beliefs, and being inspired by scripture and being supported by other people who believe the same things as me, something like forgiving someone else and forgiving myself, it's something I work towards. Sometimes I can do it instantly, and sometimes it's a goal to work towards, but it's a big part of who I am as a person, and it's one of my core beliefs. So, I think your spiritual and religious beliefs should be translating into practical things in your life, things that help your life be easier or help give you meaning or purpose or direction. And in regards to mental health, having spiritual beliefs or having religious beliefs should be giving you some sort of relief, or skills, or it should be a way of helping you mentally, not something that is going to be making you feel more confused or more alone or more judged or more guilty. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think as people with mental health issues, we are vulnerable, and we do have to be careful of groups who may be trying to take advantage of us financially. And my big red flag with that is, is this person or is this religious group asking me to give them money all the time? And if I have money, maybe that's not such a bad thing. But if I'm struggling financially and someone's telling me that the only way I'm going to feel spiritually better is by spending $50 on their book, their spiritual book, and that actually happened to me once. I remember when I was like in my mid-20s and I was studying, I wasn't working. The person who I had been not living with, but sharing a house with, they had moved out, so I had no money. I didn't have enough money to pay the rent. And this person from this spiritual group kept ringing me and kept leaving messages on my answering service. This is back in the day, before mobile phones were that popular. And they had some spiritual book. And I had told them, look, I don't have much money right now. I literally don't have money to pay the rent. I can't afford to buy your book. And they were like, no, you don't understand. If you buy this book, it's going to change your life. I believe it. I know it's going to make things better for you. And they literally would leave like several messages on my answering machine like a week. Like they were calling me more often than my mum. Now that's a red flag. Like if someone is asking you for money and trying to justify it as sort of like spiritual bonus points if you make this purchase, but they know you're struggling financially, that to me is a red flag. On the other hand, if someone like a religious group or a spiritual group know you're struggling financially or struggling with whatever, and they go out of their way to help you. I remember when my son was little, the house that we live in has got a huge backyard, and because I was a single mum and because I was studying, sometimes I was working, money wasn't a regular thing. And stuff like cutting the grass in the backyard and maintaining the yard, it was just out of my financial means. I didn't have the tools to do it. I didn't have the money to be able to do it. And the church I was going to, they had done a day where they were helping people in their own in the congregation, and someone had nominated me, and so on that day, there was about 20 or 30 people rocked up, and they all had lawnmowers and shovels and just all sorts of stuff, and they spent the whole day doing my yard. And seriously, like, the grass in my yard was like taller than me. That's how bad it had gotten, and I felt so blessed and so grateful. I was actually overwhelmed. I had to step away a few times because I was crying because I was so overwhelmed and I felt grateful for the help, but also unworthy, which I could probably do a whole other recording on that. But that's what a church should be doing. That's what a religious group should be doing. That's what a spiritual group should be doing, is helping you in your life, supporting you, encouraging you. And if you need practical help, offering you practical help, like, it was something I hadn't even talked about. That's how embarrassed I was that my backyard had turned into a jungle. And yet someone had taken enough interest in me to think maybe that's something she needs help with. They did ask me permission before they came, but they saw a need and they did what they could to meet that need. That's what a religious or spiritual group should be doing for you. And from a mental health perspective, that's what you seek in a thing. And I don't mean you need to be greedy and ask the church for money all the time, but I mean they should be supporting you. And if you have legitimate needs, they should be somewhere that you can ask for help. That said, and I'm sorry if that was too loud, that said, when it comes to mental health issues, if you are struggling with depression, with OCD, if you've had trauma in your young life, if you have schizophrenia, whatever is going on in your mental health wise, if your church is unable to help you, just stay with the normal areas that specialize in mental health recovery. You know what I mean? Go to your doctor, go to a counselor, go to a support group, read books on whatever you're going through. Self-help books are really good. It doesn't have to be expensive. You can, borrow stuff from the library or maybe find articles online. But don't give up on religion or spirituality just because they don't specialize in mental health, because they're just people, you know what I mean? And mental health is a pretty big topic, The Australian government's spending millions of dollars at the moment trying to help people because the COVID quarantine crap, whatever's going on with this virus, it's driving people crazy. It's hard. It's making people struggle mentally. So governments are spending millions of dollars trying to get mental health clinicians and peer workers and all these people who have got actual experience with helping people who are going through mental health struggle. If the government's investing that much money in it, it's because we need people who know what they're doing. And God bless them, religious groups and spiritual groups, they may be good at some things, but they're not qualified mental health practitioners, you know what I mean? Don't give up on your religious beliefs. Don't give up on your spiritual beliefs if they're not able to meet your mental health needs. Maybe give up on them if you're being, taken advantage of. That's a whole other topic. Just know that there are limitations in what people can offer. Be careful. Like I said, if you can see red flags from a religious group or a spiritual group, step away from them. If you're in a cult, that's a whole other topic. I don't want to go too over time with this recording. But if at a base level, if your religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs and your religious or spiritual community is a positive experience for you, is a place where you can find respite from your daily struggles, if you're being supported, if you get something good out of those areas of your life, awesome. If they're not able to meet you or support you because of your mental health struggles, or when you're struggling, I should say, when you're having mental health struggles, you can still have them as part of your life. You can still turn to those groups as part of your religious or spiritual beliefs, but maybe don't focus on them getting you through a mental health crisis. There are doctors who are there for that. There are counselors who are there for that. There are peer workers who can journey with you when you're struggling with stuff. Just be careful, be balanced, figure out what you need to get by. And everyone out there who has mental health struggles, it's a journey, not a destination. And I Hope you're all traveling well. That's a wrap up.